Hello, my name's Graham Boston and I help run the Aquarius Severn Astrology Society that meets every first Thursday of the month in Cheltenham, United Kingdom. For the last 20 or so years, our first meeting of the year has been devoted to a look ahead at the forthcoming 12 months from an astrological perspective. This year was no different, and we always include a review of the previous year, so we have a collage of the main news events of the year, and we look back at the main astrological events and see if there was a correlation. But this presentation, which I gave on Thursday, January the 2nd, at the Aquarius Severn meeting, is a look ahead at 2020 and the main astrological events. Now, we always start our presentations, our forecasts for the year, by just briefly mentioning the outer planet context, because like everything else astrological, it exists within a series of larger cycles. So we have the outer planets Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, travelling through Capricorn, Pisces and Taurus. Pluto entered Capricorn in 2008, very close to the time of the economic crash and subsequent recession, which we are still experiencing the repercussions of many years later. And it remains in Capricorn until 2024, and it's been a long slog through that sign for most people. Neptune is, as befits its nature, harder to pin down and interpret. Its passage through Pisces has corresponded with, and I'll give thanks to the Oxford astrologer Christina Rodenbeck for this, for this insight. Neptune in Pisces has corresponded with a kind of golden age of storytelling, particularly on TV. So we've had the rise of box sets and Netflix and binge watching and getting completely engrossed in long-running stories. It's also perhaps corresponds to the rise of things like fake news, confusion over what is true and what isn't, and also more recently, or perhaps soon to come, the rise of deep fake videos that are cleverly constructed so that you can't. You look as though you're watching somebody say something, but in fact they never did. Uranus has just gone into Taurus last year, and briefly the year before, but mainly last year, and this will correspond with changes in agriculture, in the way we produce food, the kind of food we eat, also the rise of Extinction Rebellion fits Uranus, the planet of rebellion, in Taurus, the sign of agriculture and the environment. Also, from 2012 to 2015, we experienced 7 Uranus-Pluto squares. 2011 and 2016 are in brackets because technically in those years Uranus and Pluto were within orb of being square to each other, so really the period lasted from 2011 to 2016, and during this time we saw the revolutionary energy of Uranus in Aries pitted against the harshness and power of the state, Pluto in Capricorn, giving rise to revolution in Arab states and and other forms of unrest between the individual and the state. Also, we've got Chiron in Aries. It's just moved into Aries last year, and it will remain there until 2027. Ceres goes through Capricorn, Aquarius and Pisces in 2020, and Jupiter is in Capricorn for most of this year, and Saturn is in Capricorn until December, except for the period from March 21st to July the 1st, when it kind of pokes its head into Aquarius and then moves back into Capricorn, and goes straight to a slide that shows the range of motion of the major planets throughout the year. So you can see roughly where they begin and end throughout the year. So you can see that Jupiter here starts at about 7 degrees Capricorn and goes as far as 3 degrees Aquarius. Similarly, Pluto only moves a couple of degrees, around 22, 23, 24 degrees Capricorn. Saturn moves a little bit further, and like Jupiter, it goes into Aquarius by the end of the year. Here's Ceres, which moves from Capricorn through Aquarius and into mid-Pisces. Neptune hovering around mid to late Pisces. Chiron in Aries, Uranus in Taurus. So you can see that most of the major planets are between the signs of Capricorn and Taurus. Okay, so from December the 29th, 2019 through to January the 16th, there is an unusual emphasis on Capricorn with lots of planets in that sign. So we've got Mercury, Sun, Jupiter, the Moon's south node, Ceres, Saturn and Pluto, all in Capricorn, showing an emphasis on business, government, organisation, structures, hard work, executive decisions, quite a serious time, if you like, serious in tone at least. So the first event in January is the first of 4 lunar eclipses in the year, and this is a penumbral eclipse, which effectively means that it's perhaps could be regarded as not particularly significant, because you would be unlikely, in fact I don't think you do see an eclipse of the moon as such. You may see a slight darkening, but it's not really a full or even partial eclipse. But that one is going to be visible in the United Kingdom, and it's at 20 degrees Cancer. Eclipses are generally taken to shine a light on the part of the individual's birth chart in which they take place, particularly so if you've got a planet at that particular point or within a couple of degrees of that point. It tends to throw a spotlight on the things that that planet represents, and that can be possibly an uncomfortable spotlight, or it can reveal things that were hidden, and it can be sometimes quite, it can heighten or dramatise feelings and events and situations. But as I say, this is a penumbral eclipse, so it's not particularly strong. So here's one of the main events of the year, which is technically on January the 12th, though with all these outer planet aspects, for example this conjunction, there's nothing to be gained from focusing on a particular date. Really, this started in November last year and runs through to late February, if you give it a 2 or 3 degrees orb. So it's a period of time really, but the aspect becomes exact on January the 12th at 22 degrees Capricorn. And on that day, the Sun and Mercury are within a degree or two of that point as well. So the Saturn-Pluto conjunction happens once every 38 or so years. The last one was in Libra in 1982. And Saturn, the planet of control, restriction, hard work, structure, is catching up with Pluto, the planet of power, destruction, regeneration, evolution, if you like, and obsession, and power. And so these are two slightly cold, difficult planets, and put together, it's not a jolly picture, if you like. And Saturn is ruler of Capricorn, so it's quite happy to be in Capricorn. Pluto is perhaps not particularly inimical to Capricorn, and because it's in that sign, the focus is perhaps in world events on governments, the economy, borders between countries, and organisations, particularly big organisations, big business, large organisations such as the United Nations, NATO, the EU, etc. So Saturn conjuncting Pluto can bring a number of things. It can bring extreme cold, if you want to think about the planets in astro-meteorological terms. It can bring the breakdown of the structures represented by Capricorn, as they can no longer hold under the pressure of Pluto. It can also bring control, authoritarianism, harshness, austerity, limitation, possibly even recession. However, unlike many such planetary conjunctions, this one happens once. Most conjunctions and other aspects happen 3 times, sometimes 5, and on rare occasions 7, such as the Uranus-Pluto squares, which took place 7 times during 2012 to 2015. So this happens once and moves on, which I feel is going to lessen its impact, although it's not an easy conjunction by any means. On a personal level, it's a good time to cut out those things that aren't serving one well in one's life. It's also a good time to cut back, for example, to draw up a budget and stick to it. It's a good time to give up things that one has been addicted to, be it alcohol, TV, even if one is addicted to exercise, it might be a good time to give that up. It's a time of kind of stripping down, paring back, making do with less. But more positively, it's a time for appreciating simplicity, appreciating stillness, appreciating slowing down, appreciating silence as well, and understanding the power of those things. So it's not a bundle of laughs, but during this time one can make difficult decisions that one has been putting off. It's a good time to do that, and to really kind of be honest with oneself about one's capabilities, wishes and needs, and perhaps to make serious plans about the future that are realistic and tested by experience, if you like. But also, one has to remember with this aspect to have compassion with oneself, to realise that one cannot be perfect or always achieve one's goals, and sometimes one has to let go of some goals as well. Okay, so that's one of the main events of the year, really. The big news of 2020, or one of the big news items, astrologically speaking. Moving on, we have a sextile between Jupiter and Neptune on February the 20th. Jupiter, a planet of opportunity, growth, vision, learning and teaching. Neptune, a planet of spirituality, the imagination, the soul. Sextile is a friendly aspect, so it shows these two planets getting on with each other, forming a harmonious relationship with each other for a while. So this is a good time for any kind of retreat, any kind of spiritual or healing work, for creative work, particularly if it involves some kind of effort and some work to manifest a creative vision or a spiritual vision. And it's a good time for film, TV, writing, any form of creativity, really. In March, Saturn moves into Aquarius, so it moves out of Capricorn into the following sign, and it stays there for a few months before moving back into Capricorn. Saturn moving into Aquarius is where it will be for around 2.5 years, is likely to bring a focus on social innovation, social justice, innovative technological ideas, and different ways of living, and different solutions, new solutions to social and environmental problems. So in April we have the first of 3 Jupiter-Pluto conjunctions, this time at 24 degrees Capricorn, and Jupiter-Pluto conjunctions tend to be about thinking big. So being in Capricorn, sign of business, structure, organisations, work, this is potentially a good time for economic regeneration. So we almost had the opposite idea at the beginning of the year, but by April things are likely to look rather different. And as I said, this is the first of 3 such conjunctions throughout the year. So there's a potential for a lot of economic growth, big capital investment projects. Governments might be thinking big, wanting to achieve big things at this time. They may be rather zealous about such projects, because Jupiter-Pluto can bring a certain amount of zealotry. And on a personal level, it's a good time to make plans, to formulate what one wants to achieve in the next few years, and to visualise those things, and also to start projects and to manage projects as well. It's quite a good time for one's career it gives one the opportunity to advance oneself in one's career, and to kind of basically to move ahead. Okay, so on June the 5th there's another lunar penumbral eclipse at 16 degrees Sagittarius, again visible in the UK. And on June the 21st there is a solar annular eclipse at 0 degrees Cancer, which isn't visible in the UK. And an annular eclipse is one where the disk of the moon doesn't quite cover the sun, basically because the moon is a little bit too far away to do so. So there's a kind of ring of light around the moon during an eclipse. So astrologically it's not quite as strong as a total solar eclipse, but it is nonetheless powerful, like most eclipses are. So if you were born with the sun in the last couple of degrees of Leo or the first couple of degrees of Cancer, you are likely to feel as though you were very much in the spotlight in some way around that time. Yeah, and moving on to June the 30th, we have second of the 3 Jupiter-Pluto conjunctions, again at 24 degrees Capricorn. Then on July the 2nd, Saturn retrogrades back into Capricorn. And on July the 27th, Jupiter sextiles Neptune again at 21 degrees Capricorn and Pisces. On September the 9th, Mars begins its retrograde phase, and it for quite a few weeks it's retrograde in Aries. Mars, when it retrogrades, it tends to stir things up generally, but it can also frustrate. So during Mars retrograde there may be a lot of conflict, anger, tension, but it won't necessarily be openly expressed. It might never get to that point, or it might be deliberately held back or controlled in some way. October the 12th, another Jupiter-Neptune sextile at 19 degrees Capricorn and Pisces. November the 12th, the third and final Jupiter-Pluto conjunction, this time at 22 degrees Capricorn. And then in mid-November, Mars goes direct again at 15 degrees Aries. So it resumes its usual forward motion, and that might correspond with things being unblocked, movement taking place again, conflicts becoming more out in the open rather than held back in some way. On November the 30th we have another lunar penumbral eclipse at 9 degrees Sagittarius, and then a total eclipse of the Sun on December the 14th, and this is at 23 degrees Sagittarius. And then on December the 17th, Saturn re-enters Aquarius, and it will stay there for about 3.5 years, and then closely followed by, on December the 19th, Jupiter's entry into Aquarius. And then we come to another of the main events of 2020, which is on the winter solstice, December the 21st, Jupiter conjuncting Saturn at 0 degrees Aquarius. Now this is very significant astrologically because Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions happen every 20 years, and they are like a marker for the following 20-year period, economically and culturally, if you like. But this one is particularly significant because it marks the proper change from Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions taking place in Earth signs, which they've been doing since 1842, with the exception of 1981, when it peaked into air. But from now on, Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions for the next 180 years or so will be in air signs. So this really marks a shift, a major shift from the element of earth to the element of air. And you could say that whilst the Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions have been in earth, we have seen the rise of capitalism and industrialism, and the movement from earth to air will represent a significant shift. It won't happen overnight, but it will be a shift from the exploitation of natural resources, of labour, the concentration of wealth in a few people's hands and in the hands of large organisations, corporations and governments, and a kind of redistribution of resources more equally, as befits Aquarius, and also and air, not just Aquarius, sorry, and also an emphasis less on material resources and more on ideas and data, which are ruled by air and the air element. So we're going to enter a more egalitarian phase that will last for many years, and it will see a greater acceptance of diversity, greater social justice, energy, which was so much a feature of the Jupiter-Saturn in Earth phase, is inevitably going to be generated more on a more decentralised basis. So because of renewable energy coming on stream, so it's going to be a definite shift, significant shift. Some people would say it's the beginning of the age of Aquarius. There are many such candidate times for the beginning of the age of Aquarius, which undoubtedly will or is already happening. It's my belief that it started a couple of hundred years ago, but it's not. But it is a gradual shift from one age to another, and you could say that this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction at the end of this year is a key turning point or marker post in that journey on towards the age of Aquarius. So you could say that this year is in many ways a last blast of the earthy energy that we've been experiencing over the last 160 or so years, before we shift into what will feel like very different times ahead. It's not going to be a golden age. The air element is just a different element. It's not perfect and it's not better than Earth, but it'll be different. It will feel different. People will think differently about the times they're living in. So it's an interesting year of transition. So yeah, thank you for listening, and we'll probably be adding more videos to our channel in the near future. So thanks for listening and watching.